Story Corner, presented by Jennifer. Uzara, the First Greencloak, Part 2. The floor shook unsteadily and was decorated with bars of light. Uzara drifted back into consciousness slowly as her body healed itself. She raised her head as her vision cleared, and saw the bars of a cage had cast the pattern on the floor. They were massive, each as thick as one of her forelegs. She stretched and stood, barely able to extend her full length in the confines of the cage. She pushed her head against the bars, testing their strength. The cage was held in a massive wagon, pulled by a team of 12 oxen. The Conqueror woman walked up alongside the wagon with her spirit animal, a 1.5 foot long taratan lizard that wrapped around her neck. "Ah, the kitty is awake," she said cheerfully. Uzara growled, "Who are you? Who would dare hold a great beast against her will?" The woman smiled, revealing her pointed teeth. "I am Samama, the woman who will be Queen of Nile. And I can't have any competition from you, can I?" The impertinence of this woman was shocking. Did she not know who she was speaking to? Uzara threw herself against the bars with a snarl. The bars slammed back into her, sending her reeling. The wagon shook only slightly. The bars were undamaged. "Oh, don't bother. I had this cage built especially for a big, nasty kitty like you." Uzara clawed at the door of the cage, but succeeded only in leaving tiny scratches in the metal and dulling her claws. "You are my ticket to owning all of Nilo, you know," Semela continued passionately, ignoring Uzara's increasing frenzied attempts to escape. "I used to be the leader of a small band of brigands in Zong. Now the reptile king has given me an army large enough to conquer this land and pacify it. And all he asks is that in return is that I deliver your talisman to him. With you out of the way, I'm sure my troops will have no problem scouring your territory to find the little trinket." Uzara raged, smashing herself against the bars again. "The people of Nilo will not accept this insult. They will not tolerate you capturing the great beast. I am Nilo." The woman just laughed. "We've eaten their livestock, burned their village, and stolen their crops. And in all that time, you did nothing to help them. They cursed you as much as they cursed me, if not more. Did you know, at first the prisoners we captured threatened that you would come to their aid?" She shook her head. "But you never did, you bad kitty. So we don't hear that much anymore." Uzara glared at the woman. "But you don't have to suffer. You don't have to be part of this war. Just tell me where your talisman is, and once I have it, I'll let you go. You see, there's no reason we can't be friends." Uzara snarled at her and turned away. "Very well. I'll just find it myself," Semela said with a shrug, then turned to walk to the other end of the caravan. The wagon rolled along the dusty road, past the wreckage of war. The great cat watched through the bars as they passed encampments and lines of marching soldiers. As they caught sight of the caged leopard, many cheered. Uza growled and hissed at them, but that only encouraged them. They rode past fields, barren and unsown, past villages burned and destroyed, past lines of prisoners, proud warriors who had been forced to surrender by the invading army. She saw the colors of many tribes, universally tattered and worn and weary. Some looked at her with disappointment, some with despair, some with contempt. Others simply looked past her, eyes dead and defeated. That night, Uza's wagon was parked at the edge of a large encampment. They offered her no food or water. Not that she would have accepted it anyways. A group of conquerors stood guard, led by a large, bald man with an eye patch. Slowly, the camp fell silent as the conquerors finished their meals and went into their tents. The moon rose, flooding the savannah with blue light. Uza threw back her head and roared her fury into the night. Uza tried to pace nervous energy overcoming her, but there wasn't room enough to move the length of her cage, and she had to make do with walking in circles. Her legs quivered impatiently. She should be running through the grasslands, hunting for her next meal. No leopard was meant to be caged, least of all a great beast. It was well after midnight when Uza turned around to hear shouts at the edge of her camp. Her eyes adjusted in the dark. A human would only have been able to make out vague shapes, but as Uza's eyes focused, she took in the whole scene. The Veridan boy she had met just before she was captured was charging across the camp. The conquerors were drawing their swords, but he was moving too fast. Not quite the speed of a leopard, but close. He was charging straight for her, but what was he doing? Humans. She admired their bravery, but he had the dumb loyalty of a dog, not the cunning of a cat. The large, one-eyed man stepped in the way, drawing a nasty-looking scimitar. Tembo stopped, glancing at Uza. She turned her nose up and looked away from him. "Stupid boy, you can't defeat them all," she called out as he faced off with the large man. Tembo simply grinned at her and raised an eyebrow. Then he threw the spear. It sliced into the large man, who stumbled back. He must not have expected that a boy wearing a green cloak would give up his only weapon. The bald man screamed in pain and fell to the ground. As the other guards charged, Tembo danced to the side and started running again, back away from the camp. A group of conquerors charged after the boy. Uza watched as he reached the top of the hill, pulling away from the pursuit. Uza scraped her claws against the bar of the cage in frustration. If this boy thought he could kill an army of conquerors one by one, he was more foolish than she thought. Even as his pursuers disappeared on foot in the distance, another group was saddling up horses. A moment later, they raced off into the night, urging their horses to go faster. Uza laid down in the cage. The conqueror woman had been right about the Nilolians not rising to her defense, and now there was nothing one foolhardy boy could do. Should she have done more to help them? Things had been simpler in the time before humans had spread into every corner of the continent. The camp was in an uproar. The sound of the injured guard's shouts as another conqueror removed the spear filled the air. Uza watched out of the corner of her eye as a small shadow detached from one of the tents and dodged through the crowd, making its way to the injured guard. While the bald man screamed, the shadow grabbed something from its belt. The shadowy figure then zigzagged its way between the legs of the conquering soldiers. Uza turned to look directly at it. It was the goat thief's monkey, Okama. The creature nimbly dodged past the men and jumped onto the wagon. In her teeth she held the ring, a key ring. Uza stood flexing her muscles. "Open it," she demanded. The monkey squeaked back in reply. Unseen by the conquerors, Okuma slipped the key into the lock and the cage door swung open. The leopard jumped out of the cage, sending any unfortunate conquerors who happened to be nearby flying. With a few swats of her paws, she dispatched those who tried to fight her. The rest fled, sprinting for the relative safety of the camp. Uza stretched, savoring her freedom. Their poison would be useless now. She would tear this camp apart and show them the folly of angering a great beast. But the monkey jumped in her way. Okuma squealed and tossed a handful of grass at her, then pointed at the savannah. Uza growled at the shrilling little demon. "That boy? You want me to help him?" He might outrun the conquerors who had initially chased him, but he would surely be run to ground by the mounted ones who followed. For a moment she considered simply swallowing the insolent monkey whole, but surprised herself by circling around and changing course. The boy had risked his life to help her escape, and the conquerors chasing him deserved her wrath just as much as the ones in the camp. She turned and loped into the grasslands. Uza was hunting again. When Uza caught up to Tembo, he was at the edge of a ravine in the rocky outcroppings between the grasslands and the Velta. She crept to the edge of the top, looking down on the humans and animals below. He was cornered by a group of armed conquerors and their animals, mostly dingoes, emus, and other animals from Stirlo. Tembo had somehow gotten a hold of a spear and was backed up against the wall as the conquerors advanced. "Just give up, boy. We won't hurt you," one of the conquerors was saying. "I'm tempted to make you the same offer," Tembo answered, "but I don't have time or patience to escort a bunch of prisoners around. I'll just have to kill you." He hefted the spear threateningly. The conqueror laughed. "Brave boy. Thinks he's funny. Now he's going to be a dead boy." The soldiers advanced, and Tembo fanned his spear in a wide arc, trying to hold them back. They pushed forward anyway. But as the first conqueror swung at him, Uza dropped to the floor of the ravine, laying the lead attacker out with one paw. The others drew back. The giant leopard roared, shaking the ravine with the sound. "It's the cat!" one of them yelled. "Run for it!" another answered. Within seconds, the conquerors were running out of the ravine, armor clanking as they slammed into each other in their haste to escape. "Thanks for the help," Uza growled to Tembo in a low voice, then turned to charge after the fleeing enemies. "Don't chase them. We don't have time," Tembo said. Uza turned back to him. "We? You helped me. I just helped you. We're even." Tembo grinned. "Really? I stole you from my rivals. By the laws of the Veridan, you belong to me now." "I am not one of your goats, boy," Uza growled, advancing on him. "If I had done nothing," Tembo continued, "I would be safely in the grasslands and you would be in a cage." Uza gave him a hard stare. "Fine," Tembo said. "We can argue about how great a friend I am later. I was spying on the conquerors all day, and I heard their plans. That woman with the filed teeth, Simila, is leading a force into your hunting grounds. One of the elders told them where your talisman is hidden." "None of you know that," answered Uza, looking back into the grasslands. "No human has laid eyes on my talisman." Temba shrugged. "So no one knows it's buried under the red orchid?" Uza turned back with a roar. "How do you know that?" "Don't blame me," Tembo answered. "I just heard them talking. But we need to go now in order to stop them. We have a better chance if we work together." Uza simply laughed. "Stay out of my way, little warrior," she rumbled, then leapt out of the ravine and disappeared into the night.